I'm very, very delighted to welcome our first speaker, Jean Jullien, who is sat there and will be coming on stage in a second. Jean is a French artist living and working in Paris. Originally from Nantes, he graduated from Central St. Martin's in 2008 and the Royal College of Art in 2010. His creative output ranges from painting, illustration, installations, photography and video to costumes, books, posters and clothing. He has shown work around the world with museums and galleries in Paris, London, New York, Tokyo, Seoul and Singapore and more. His work appears in the New York Times, New Yorker, National Geographic, SZ Magazin, Télérama and more, and he has collaborated with RCA Records, Amnesty International, Le Coq Sportif, Hotel Amour, Champion USA and Petit Bateau, among many more global brands. His first retrospective monograph was published by Phaidon Press in 2022 alongside his retrospective exhibition at DDP in Seoul. I mean, what an incredible thing, and he's quite young, got an amazing career to go. So we are just so lucky to have Jean here today, and I'm going to stop waffling on now and introduce Jean to the stage. Thank you all very much. Can we do a sound test on the microphones?
Thank you very much.
Can everyone online hear the microphones? I'm assuming they can because they heard me just now. Welcome, Jean. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good.
Good. Thank you so much for being here at St. Bride today and kicking off this fantastic day. I'm preempting it by saying it's going to be fantastic, but I hope you'll all agree that it will be fantastic. So, just to get us started off with questions today, can you tell us a bit about how you started your career, and did you always want to know that you wanted to be a graphic artist?
I've always drawn like a lot of kids, and I wanted to do animation and comic books originally. I did not get into schools, and then I sort of veered into trying to do fine arts, and I did not get into the schools. I basically tried all the schools at some point for anything graphic and didn't get in any. So by circumambulated ways, I ended up in like a very pragmatic 2 years course in graphic design, and I did not really know what graphic design was about. And I learned the basic in like typography, image composition, and all of that stuff. And then I had really good teachers that were practicing designers as well as teachers, and they sort of like made me understand that a lot of the stuff that I liked, image-based, had a practicality, vice versa. Mm-hmm. So I was really into skateboarding, and I could see all the graphics in skateboard.
Yeah.
And they sort of, made me understand that it was all sort of linked, the stuff that I liked and the course that I had undertaken. And after that, I tried getting to schools of fine art in Paris and in London, St. Martin, and I got in both. And I decided to go to London to just try something else. And in St. Martin, I really enjoyed it was a very different approach from the course I had taken, where I learned the basic and it was super like rigorous. And St. Martin just seemed like this massive open playground with like people from all over the world, and they were encouraging us to try photography, video, anything. And that sort of suited me, the sort of playful approach. And it was also the beginning of social media. At the time, you had MySpace, Facebook, and stuff like that. And sort of without thinking about it too much, I started sharing the work that I was doing at school. Yeah. And the personal work in the same time, and because of, the energy that you had at that time when something is new, people were sharing a lot, and I started getting like offers to do posters for parties or taking part in group shows and stuff, and that started, and I carried on working like that until now.
That's fantastic. So it was quite an organic way into creating a career then, just by being around, putting stuff out there. How has social media changed since that point? Is it the same sort of organic, that's how you get work? Or is it, because you've obviously seen it grow from MySpace. I mean, I had a MySpace account a very long time ago, and it's sadly gone, but I miss it. But has it changed a lot, social media?
I just opened Instagram this morning, and they asked me to pay 13 quid in order to get no advertising. So it did change a bit. Yeah. But I don't know. I think it became more popular. It became more of a thing. It's less of a novelty. It's part of our lives with its own like social patterns and classes and behavior. So yeah, I think it's less new. It's a bit more cynical maybe, and we have enough distance to see what's good about it, what's not good about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I have to confess, I was chatting to the brilliant Catherine Dixon the other day about you and talking to you. And she mentioned that you used to work at the coffee shop at Central St. Martin's as a student that you used to draw on the coffee cups there. Can you tell us more about this? And did it influence your work in any way?
It's like social media. It's a cafe, so you put stuff on the wall, and then people come in the cafe and you talk about it, etc., etc. It's the old school version of it.
Yeah.
But it was nice. It was part of the nice thing about St. Martin, the fact that my friend Thibaut was working in the cafe as well, and he was putting up poster shows for like students and friends every now and again. And it just had a nice hub energy.
Yeah.
It was good.
Was that something that you just decided to do yourselves in that space?
Yeah, more or less.
That's great.
Everybody was showing their stuff. I don't know, there was a good sense of community in St. Martin when I was there. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And people were putting on parties and using graphics. I think it's probably the same now in art schools, but yeah, it was good.
Very different to my experience at university.
Oh, yeah?
Just very different, yes, but all very good. So your practice is really wide and varied, including painting and illustration to photography, video costume, as I've said, and installations. How did you end up diversifying so much? Sorry, I can't speak. Was it an organic journey or something you intentionally set out to do?
No, I think it's, I keep getting excited by new stuff like everyone, and I think that I know my limitations. I know that my technical skills have never been fantastic, so I try to focus on the idea and experimenting and being playful and creating an overall body that has a personality, hopefully, and it's less into the perfection of the craft and more about the overall story that it's telling.
Yeah.
And I find that it gives me a bit more flexibility sometimes when I want to say something. If I was just doing illustration, I feel like my limitation wouldn't allow me to tell the same story. I mean, that's also how the sort of painting started, when I wanted to de-zoom a little bit, and I realized that I wasn't as skilled as the people whose work I really enjoyed who were able to do that. So I tried it in a different medium, and it worked better, and I'm hoping that slowly but surely as well, depending on the project, I try to mix disciplines that I'm trying. Yeah. And yes, it's organic.
Absolutely. And you have got such a strong voice in your work and sort of identity. Did that come quite early from when you were drawing on coffee cups, or is it something that's evolved, over your career?
No, I think it's sadly it's still the same as it was at the beginning.
No.
But it's because I was okay from the beginning with the limitation, and I knew that the simplicity, once accepted, would be able to travel longer instead of trying to headbutt into a wall and be frustrated with what I couldn't do. I was just quite happy to see what I could do, and then try to take it to different ways. But it's difficult because sometimes I look back at I've been keeping sketchbooks for 20 years, and we showed them in Seoul last year, all sketchbook, and so you could see like a physical timeline of the evolution of my drawing, and there was very little evolution, which was a bit annoying to see. But then there was a coherence. So, and because it was visually quite coherent, in a way, the story was more legible. And I think there's something nice about that. It's like a red thread that communicates itself easily, and I think maybe that's why sometimes my work is able to speak to a wide and varied audience, is because it's simple.
It's really universal. I think you don't need words, which means that anyone in any language can see your work and interpret it instantly.
But that's what's complicated as well with social media as well. I feel like looking back that I was under the illusion. Sorry, I'm not looking at you guys. Is that annoying?
I'm not either. That's really bad.
So I'm just sort of like looking up and talking.
We're both now looking at you all.
But I sort of like looked back and was thinking that there's this romantic idea that social media has unified the world into one giant crowd that agrees and has the same culture and all of that. It clearly is not the case.
Yeah.
And so sometime when I do work that doesn't need interpretation for that doesn't need words for explanations, I realize that's not always the case, and that can lead to humongous interpretation. Sorry. So it's tricky to navigate.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
one thing that was meant to defend the cause is being seen as something detrimental to the cause.
Yeah.
And then you have to be like, hold on, you didn't understand what I was trying to say. I said it badly, but I meant that. But it's a learning curve.
Absolutely, and we're all here to learn and make mistakes, use them.
Yeah,
whatever.
but I don't know if one global platform is very forgiving in that matter.
Yeah, that's very true. Yes, Twitter is not so forgiving. So, and as everyone can see, just a small snippet of the range of work that you do across all disciplines. So if someone comes to you and says, I want to work in something, I can't think of a really good example off the top of my head without sounding stupid, but, working in metal or big sculpture, if you've never done it before, do you just go, yes, I'll do it, and then figure out how to make it happen and work with the right people, or how does that sort of happen?
Well, the metal sculptures in particular is something that carried on from Saint Martin, where when I wasn't very confident with my drawing, I wanted to do scenes and stuff like that. So I started cutting out characters and making little paper theatrical models and photographing them, then adding black lines for contrast. And then as I did more work, sort of flattening the whole thing and keeping the colors in the black line. And when I got the opportunity to work on sort of projects where people are saying, oh, we'd like you to do a sculpture, like do whatever you want, I figured that I wanted to bring those paper characters back in volume, but in a shape that would retain its simplicity and its relatability, but it had to be more sustainable. And then we worked with, it's more about starting a project than being able to discern or to formulate the problem, and based on that problem, trying to come up with the most appropriate answer. And metal lend itself to recreating the paper because it's a sheet that you cut out and you fold. It's the same. It's just harder. But it's more that way. Usually I don't get people coming to me and being like, we'd like you to do a sculpture in that shape or blah, blah, blah. It's more like, I'm lucky that people have been giving me a lot of carte blanche, which is super nice. And then I try to come up with something good.
Have they ever not been able to do what you wanted? Or?
Yeah, a lot of time actually. But then it's good. It's like working with limitation is also grounding, and then it forces you to be less of a diva and to work harder to actually do the work, which is nice.
Absolutely. You don't come across as a diva to me, but maybe behind closed doors you're a different...
I'm a monster,
Terrible. So can you tell us a bit about your creative process? You've mentioned sketchbooks, which I know lots of students are always told are really great things to have. Has that always worked for you? And how else do you... where do you get your inspiration and things?
I'm very reactive. Like I face a situation and then that triggers something, and then I try to digest that reaction and formulate something in that equation. It's like a therapeutic process. It's action-reaction. But the sketchbooks is more of an ongoing narrative that I've kept for years. And it's also like a platform for experimentation, and that's where I write down. But you can actually see the process by looking at the sketchbook in the sense that it's like observing something, drawing it, having that spark an idea, and then continuing digging into the idea and coming up with something, and then later on it takes shape. The show that we did last year in Seoul at DDP was quite interesting in the sense that it was like a retrospective, which sounds very pompous, but I took everything that I had done from the coffee cup in St. Martin's to the metal sculptures. And we showed all the sketchbooks, and then we showed all of the sketches, and then we showed the final work. And it was quite fun because the people we noticed in the show were going to doing the show in one way and then going back to see the original sketchbook idea and how that sort of transformed into a physical object, whether it was a voluminous sculpture or or something done for a client. And then that's something that I really like, seeing the journey of an idea and how it takes various shapes and it betters itself or transforms itself over iterations. And I sort of quite often questions the limitation of what I do when I was talking about the fact that it never changed. It's always the same changing. It's repeating and changing shapes like a musical cover.
Yeah.
But I don't know. In the same time, I quite like it as well. Like there's painters whose work I like, and they've reworked their ideas over time. Like, and then accidents happen and changes and evolve. It's organic.
Yeah, that's great. Do you draw from life when you've got your sketchbooks out, or is it more just ideas and random things you think of?
No, I draw for life
So you draw
a
from
lot
life,
as well.
yeah.
I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's great. And do you think that's really key to your success, or just part of your process, or just it is just something you've just always done, or?
Yeah, it's just something that I've always done, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself, is there anything you draw a lot of that you didn't realise until you saw all your sketchbooks out there, or is it mainly people or things, or?
My mom.
Your mum?
Yeah. And my dad, and then I've turned into characters and then turn them into sort of like icon, like synthetic characters that I've used throughout all of my work.
Yeah.
You know, my mom has this distinctive fringe and bowl haircut, and I've used her, like that's my token character.
Yeah.
And same for my dad, and then there's others, but yeah, there's the beach, and then I've started making paintings about the beach and things like that. But the people that I hang out with, friends and family, I've used throughout my work in different shapes as well. And when I do a sculpture, I would name it from one of my friends and things like that.
That's really nice.
I like the idea of an ongoing narrative through personal or commercial projects.
How do they feel about that?
Well, we're doing like a show at the moment, TV show, and I'm using my parents, and I have to contractually get them to, well, we're talking about it. I'm like, are you sure that you're okay with it? And they're like, yeah, but I don't know if they understand the implications. So yeah, it's complicated to navigate.
So can you tell us about the TV show, or is it a bit under wraps?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Sorry.
Not a problem.
I should have mentioned it, but it lended itself to the question.
We will move on swiftly and no one will remember. So I know you've worked with your brother on animations and things. How did that dynamic work, and how did that start about?
It started when we were 4 or 5 playing with toys, and it carried on to now. But yeah, we've always been very close, hung out, and he started doing music, and he's very good at learning stuff, which I'm terrible at. So we're quite a good match for that. Yeah. And then when I started doing drawings and he started doing music, we sort of like I did visuals for his music videos, and he did music for my installations, and we just carried on. But now he's taken on wood sculpture. Oh wow! So now we're able to, and I've started doing painting. So when we do gallery show, we're able to do it together, which is super nice. And he's still doing music for some of my installations, etc. So it's cool.
Nice. Can you tell us about, outside of other illustrators and artists' work, what influences, inspires, or helps spark your ideas and creativity?
Things that I see, like situations in illustration. Situations inspire me a lot. In painting, it's more like classic expressionist work. Otherwise, I think that's the moment. It sounds really corny, but it's true. No,
that's true. And are there any any creatives that have really just inspired you or influenced you in any way?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it's gonna sound dusty, but in painting, there's like Vuillard and Matisse, the classics, and in graphics, Saul Bass, Savignac, Paul Rand, Tommy Unger, Sampé. Yeah, I've got a lot of heroes.
Absolutely, yes. There's normally too many to list in one talk, isn't there? Exactly. But that's a great list. What do you do when inspiration doesn't strike?
I go out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just, I go out and I look around, I take my sketchbook and I see it, but it's, there's two different things. When I do self-initiated projects, then that's what I do. And then usually when I do commercial projects or when I'm being given a task to do, I find it way easier because I try to approach it like an exercise when you're at school and like formulating the question and coming up with answers. in a way, even though it's technically more limiting, I find it easier to work with a brief.
Absolutely. It's it's always that sort of fine balance, isn't it? So your work is full of humour and imagination and just beautifully observed moments of human life interaction. Has that always been the case? So has that always sort of, from being a kid, up to now, is that sort
No,
of...
no, I was only doing like superheroes and extremely aggressive little kids drawings.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I think when I started doing the sketchbooks, like 20 years ago, that's when my work started taking more inspiration from the everyday. But also it was a great time to start that because that was when social media and mobile phones and laptops started. And I think we could all feel that there was a fundamental change in the way everything was working, I guess, similar to when TV arrived or like other societal changes. And I think that's just so disruptive to a society that it's extremely good for inspiration.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. You really are an international artist, having grown up in France, studied in London, lived in New York, exhibited and worked with museums and companies all around the world. Has this global perspective influenced you in any way or changed the way you work or view the world?
Yeah, I think it has. It's super. I'm gonna start with the positive. It's very endearing to know that people support you from all over the world, and when you get messages from someone at the other end of the world that has probably a very, very different life from yours, and that your work still talk to them, and they take the time to reach out and manifest that. It's fantastic. And then, as I was saying earlier, it's also been very complicated in a few moments, which made me realize, and it's a bit of a shame because it also sort of made me limit myself a lot. I think at some point, potentially, my mental health got affected a little bit by certain moments, and I was like, in order to protect myself and the people in my care, I try to think twice before drawing, which is not always very good. It's probably smarter in the world we live in, but it's not. It's a bit less sincere, and I find that to be a shame. So, fortunately, there's other, with gallery shows or museum shows, when you're able to articulate a narrative and you have the physical context where you maybe being able to contextualize the work that you're presenting, then you have less margin for misinterpretation. But it's a shame because there's something so nice as well in like communicating an ideas to a wide audience.
Absolutely. Looking back at your career so far, what has been the highlight, and do you wish you had done anything differently?
Yeah. The few bumps that I've taken, I think I could have been smarter with that. But then again, I'm very lucky and happy where I am right now. So I wouldn't be there if I had not done that. So no, I think I'm happy.
It's all part of who you are, isn't it? You learn from the mistakes. You pick yourself, move on.
I hope I learned.
Yes. Well, let's hope. Let's all hope. Has having kids make you change the way you think about things or work, or
Yeah, big time. But that again, like I'm trying to. I know that I'm having to be fit and ready to take care of people, so I need to prioritize certain things, which is very healthy, and you can't be a papa diva. But other than that, I think the way they see stuff. I mean, that show actually specifically, it's in Brussels at the moment. It's a whole narrative about life, like taken from an individual perspective and how that participates in a collective perspective. That's sort of the idea of the show. But in that, I reflect on how the way I'm doing work is similar to the way my kids learn, in the idea of synthesizing the things that you witness, and in order to understand them, you reduce them to very basic things, and then you reorganize them in a composition. For example, the show talks about civilization and the environment, eco-anxiety, and the notion of getting older as your kids are getting old. So, big, broad notions. And I'm sort of summarizing, can you say that? Yeah, summarizing them with this installation where you know nature is formed as this psychomantis kind of praying mantis sculpture, and then you have the negative impact of humanity as this sort of crab-like character, and then we have the city and stuff like that. So but it's like a little play, and I just, when I watch my kids use blocks to represent the city and this story and that, and how they disregard totally the shape of things, and it's more about the avatars and their narrative use. I find that fascinating, and it's something that like I look back at the way I formulate ideas, and it's quite similar.
Yeah. That's great. And is there any advice you would give to your younger self?
Well, just the way that I've done things that have worked for me, which is to work a lot and share it, and then from that maybe something good. So it's kind of like quantity over quality, which is a terrible advice. But I enjoyed that because it was organic. Like that's the word that we keep repeating, and there was happy accidents along that, and I just like the idea of doing a lot of stuff, looking back and learning from that.
Is there any advice you would give to anyone starting out in their own like graphic illustration-y career or similar things, or would it be different?
Yeah, but I've actually exchanged with a few people that asked me that, and I try to remember how I was doing stuff at the time. And, just keeping a diary is great, sharing your work as well. And we're very lucky that there's way less verticality than there used to be. And I think, but it's also difficult because there's so many people, and it's very difficult to not fall victim to the trends, but equally the trends are also something that usually is symbolic of an era, and that's nice to be part of an era.
Absolutely.
So I don't know, just keep on producing and sharing.
Absolutely. We've got time for a few audience questions. If anyone online would like to ask a question, if you could put it in the chat box, and I'll come to the computer in a second. Does anyone in the room have a question? Yes, Catherine.
Oh, hey.
I'm very lucky to have had my little face drawn on a coffee cup many years ago. I wondered how long does a sketchbook last on average? So I wonder what your kind of drawing rate is like. How regularly do you have to get a new sketchbook?
I do it every week now, and sometimes every day when I'm not with my kids. But it's difficult to do that with kids. I keep doing it. I've got one here. I did it this morning, but it's a more chaotic narrative. It used to be a real record of everything that was being said by people. I looked back at the sketchbooks from St. Martin's, and it was mad because it was literally, there was a lot of drawings of our classes, and you could see the whole building, and then the things that you guys were actually saying and what the students were responding. And now it's more of a mix of the observational drawings and some quotes and a lot of work ideas. But I was wondering about separating it all to keep the narrative, but I think the fact that the work bit is creeping in so much is also quite interesting, because you see a coherence in how the work bit affects the live bit and vice versa. So, yeah. Thanks.
Anyone else have a question in the room? Oh, yes, I'll come back to the back. Sorry. That's okay. Need me exercise. Okay.
Thanks. My question is, a lot of illustrators become known for a certain look and style, and then feel quite a bit of pressure not to deviate away from that style once they have it. Have you experienced that at all in your career? Do you maybe wish that you could?
Yeah, I think when I started showing painting, it was a bit of a letdown. It seemed for like people that like the illustration and the sort of like visual puns, because it wasn't funny, it was painting. But I don't know, I just kept on doing it because it made me feel really happy, and I think I tried to focus on that. And then progressively it became something more, and now in the shows, those shows that you see there's a lot more interactions between both, and it's progressively I'm starting to add drawings into the painting environment, and they become more installations. And so I sort of trusted myself with like knowing that over time it would all make sense in a way. But it was quite a rupture, and it made me feel less confident when I saw that something was less popular, but because I knew that it genuinely made me feel very happy, and it made sense at the time when I did it. It's when I started having kids, and I took on surfing as well, and all of them were very connected, and I used that in my work a lot as well. And then it made me understand as well, looking back, what the minimalistic, humoristic visual language stood for in my life. And now I'm able to use both of them together. So it was a bit of a risk, and I don't know, it was interesting to do.
Any more questions in the room? Oh, Lily, yes.
Just wow on your work and also your career.
Thank you.
Really well done. And I just really love the humour that you have. And I wondered how you have a narrative in colour, and how do you feel your relationship towards colour throughout your career, and how do you allow that to influence maybe the illustration or the narrative of the actual whole picture?
The colors.
Yes, the colour.
I did find the painting quite liberating for that, because in illustration I had a very poster-like approach, and I felt like I had a very limited palette that I really enjoyed using. And then after a while I felt like, am I going round in circles? Yes. And then painting was liberating in that I didn't try to recreate the stuff that I was doing in illustration with painting. I just went a completely different way. But then with that, I started using a certain color palette that I could then reuse in illustration. So it was an interesting ping-pong exchange. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just scrolling through some fantastic comments online about how much everyone is loving your work, Jean, which is great. I'm just seeing if there are any. Does anyone online have a question? I'm assuming not for the moment, but I will come back. Anyone else in the room with a question? Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's lovely work, really lovely and inspiring for a Saturday morning as well. I'm just wondering if there are other artists or image makers that you're inspired by in turn.
I think, the people that were saying in Sampé, Ungerer, Soul Bass, Paul Run, there's a lot, but current makers, I don't know, there's too many. It's just like social media is crazy for that. There's just people everywhere, so like you try to keep in touch, but at the same time, I don't know, friends. A lot of my friends, I follow their work a lot, so I could name them, like my friend Yann Lebec and Gwenda Lebec, my brother Nico, Thibaut Erem, all the people that I started doing work, and we started our careers together, and then I'm interested in how we're all journeying and seeing the evolutions of their work. Because we share a lot of similar basic inspirations, and then we've all gone in quite different ways. So I thought it was quite interesting to see where that goes.
Have you ever collaborated more visually with anyone, so that's maybe not quite in your style, but sort of mixing with theirs, or is that something that you probably wouldn't do because?
Well, with my friend Yann Lebec, we used to do like books together where we would each do a chapter, and then I've reproduced that principle with a duo called Merzik and Morisot. They do like amazing black and white drawings, and we did this exquisite corpse book where one would do a drawing, send it back to the other was taking an element from that drawing to do another one. But never like a really four-handed drawing. I don't know, that would be weird, but maybe I should try.
Yeah, four-handed drawing, I love that. Any more questions? Oh yes, one at the back. Sorry.
if anyone else wants the mic, then just let me know. Like dream project. I know a lot of artists get asked this when they're maybe younger in their career, but like now that you've got kind of done like a breadth of amazing work, what's that like one thing, like designing a whole building front or something like this? That would be really cool for you.
I'd love that.
Yeah,
I mean,
what's that dream? Sorry.
I think like since I did 2 shows in museums, and having this whole space made me realize that that's the dream stuff, is to have a big space and where you're able to hopefully create an environment that takes people, there's a rupture with outside, so you're able to create a completely different paradigm, and that's something that I find super, super exciting. So I'd love to do more spaces. Yeah.
We have just had a question online, actually, if that's okay, because we've got to wrap up in a second. Someone's asked, do you think France has a greater appreciation for graphic design and illustration? It's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question, because France is probably the country where I work the less. I think there is definitely an incredible appreciation for all things graphics, but in a very French way.
Yeah.
There's the graphic novels, or like bande dessinée as we call it, is extremely popular in France, and there's great galleries about it. There's a great gallery scene, but we have a lot of graphic design as well. There's Salomon, and it's just different. I think it does have an appreciation for things graphic.
Because French children's books, because I work in children's publishing, and we all just look at them and go, oh my God, they're just so inventive and really different to the UK market. Is that?
You have really good kids' books here too.
We do. I'm not. But they're just a bit more experimental, and you can be less commercial in a way, I think. But it depends on the market again, doesn't it? But some in the UK
slightly
are as well.
less commercial in certain. But I mean, I'm sure there's like loads of British independent publishers as well that will counteract that comment. But there's publishers like l'École des Loisirs in France has always been quite a staple of kids' books publishing. But they work a lot with foreign authors as well. So I think there is a certain editorial approach, but that really feeds from foreign creativity.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I would like to say we do have a fantastic children's book market in this country, and it is experimental and brilliant, just very different. It's just very different.
My first kids' book was with Walker Books.
Oh, nice.
I work with those guys quite a lot.
They're brilliant there. It is. Yeah, I just like to cover every basis so that my colleagues don't come back and go, Becky, what were you saying?
You've dissed us.
I was just going to ask, finally, is there a question you wish you'd always get asked at something like this and never get asked? Or no? It's always anything. So that's good. But it's just been such a pleasure to chat with you today, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
And for starting off the day. Yeah, thank you so much. I'd just like to say a huge round of applause to Jean Jullien. Thank you.
Thank you very much.